So this is Lloyd, the son of the Baron Arcos Frontera, the lord that oversees the county of Frontera. The soul inside this person is actually someone else, from Korea in the era of the future. He went to another world where the protagonist is someone else, called Javier Esrahan. As of now, his mission with Javier are to repay his family's debt caused by his father got scammed by his own knight. Armed with his knowledge from the 21st century as civil engineer, he exploits his knight, Javier the future sword master, to do all kind of works, such as digging channel for a house he was contracted to build and for most importantly to cut a massive caterpillar turd into uniform length. Building the high-rise model in real time with just a few gesture of his hand. That was what Lloyd imagining as he draws the modeling tunnel for the mine he is going to build. And he gets so bored doing it with the laser that comes out from his hand is taking too long. Hoping that he could summon 100 undead workers that he didn't have to pay. The system calls out to him saying that he don't like it. The system tells him to draw with his hand again. But then Lloyd immediately got his act together, thanking the system, and tells her that she is the best. He explained that after the Newman incident, he raised his approval rating with the Baron, Baroness, Javier, and Bayern, which gives him 639 RP. With those points, Lloyd went on leveling up spree, and he was able to gain all sort of skills. After finishes the road, with the newly skills he acquired, Lloyd goes to the mine, scanning the entrance looking for a way towards the mine. The skill that he uses allows him to see up to 5 meters in depth, and with that he is able to find a safe path. The problem is, he need to dig it out as quickly as possible. It would take too long on human power alone, and they will tire out too quickly. While Podong is in bed sick from constructing the road and all the long distance jobs. Even if Podong recovers, he would be too big so it would be ended up too risky. Having no other way, Lloyd summons the gacha summon window, as he has plenty of RP points left. And so he did, with the hopes to get what he needs to forge the way towards the mine of the black coal. Lloyd summons his next creature. What comes out now is a pink caterpillar, which Lloyd ignores again, making her fell face down to the ground. With indifferent looks, Lloyd thoughts that the caterpillar might be for assassinating people that has poison. He also thoughts that she looks pretty useless from the outside. But then again, Podong looked useless too at first. So he decides to ask Bangle whether she can grow bigger with the sunflower seeds, and asks her about her skills as well. While Bangle looks so excited to meet her master. A few weeks later, in the mining site, Lloyd explained that at the front of the tunneling machine, an enlarged Bangle is digging out and eating the dirt, with Bangle's skill called Accelerated Dirt Digestion, and Javier gets ready to receive whatever comes out. Step 2. Bangle launches a steel dung. Step 3. Javier cuts the steel dung into a uniform length. Step 4. The workers create steel segment to support the tunnel. Step 5. Reality check for Javier, as he is a knight, a future sword master, wondering why he is underground slashing at a giant snake's turd, while Lloyd making sure that no step were missed, so no time were wasted, repeatedly pushing the tunnel, making the support further into the mine. Lloyd also didn't forget that he hasn't installed the oxygen pipe. They all would probably be unconscious already. Javier then calls out to Lloyd, telling him to head out for now, as Lloyd also needs to take a break like the other workers. But Lloyd curses at Javier, saying that he is the one in charge, adding that he should be on site at all times. Lloyd then remembers back in his previous life, many bosses just showed off their title and they never even bothered to show up to site, and swore to never do that. Upon scanning deeper towards the mine, Lloyd finally able to see it, the black coal. He then cheers up the workers as they are almost there, and tells them to keep going. Lloyd also not forget to thanks Bangle, because of her they able to do it 10 times faster. He also reminds the worker the principle of the safety first, adding that once they reach the black coal layer, they will dismantle the shield and enlarge the mining space, while at the same time, there are something knocking from the ground. When Lloyd tries to check on it, he sees that there is a hole where he couldn't see before. Suddenly, there's a massive ant comes out from the mine, surprises Lloyd making him fell down, to be always ready for a fight. Javier slashes the ant, then Lloyd comes swiping in, smashing the ants in the head flat to the ground. It actually scared the shit out of Lloyd, thinking that it wasn't in the book, and he realizes that ant doesn't live alone. They live in colonies as the other ants readily swarming into the tunnel. As they come, the first thing Lloyd does is evacuates his workers, and with Javier's help, they manage to hold them off, preventing the ants attacking the workers. Lloyd is overwhelmed thinking how many the ants are, because if the ants manages to go out, the barony will be finished. He thoughts whether Javier is able to hold them off, and it's actually impossible as there are not enough oxygen in the tunnel. Lloyd thinking to destroy the shaft, but without dynamite, the shaft won't collapse. He is so overwhelmed with what he has to do. Then Javier slaps him, telling Lloyd to get a hold of himself and not be consumed by panics. Lloyd then yells at Javier as he is dealing with the ants. Lloyd says that he is thinking up a plan, which Javier tells him to think more quickly because he can't hold on much longer. Lloyd then thinks of something. He decides to face them head on and go towards the ant nest. Javier thoughts that sounds like a ridiculous idea, but decides to trust him anyway. They both run, marching towards the ant colony that get in their way. In the manor, the workers report what had happened in the mine, and Lord Arcos immediately take up his armor and prepares to go to the tunnel, while Javier and Lloyd drive deeper into the nest. At this point, Javier can't hold much longer in a condition where the air is hot but thin, which is still too much for the future swordmaster. So, Lloyd needs to find a methane gas layer quickly as he has not a second to waste. Lloyd explained that there are methane-producing bacteria that live in coal. As a result, there will be pockets of methane gas dotted around. If he is able to find it, he can just blow up the whole colony, not risking them goes out to the village. Then, Lloyd finds it, the methane layer in the mine, as he is going to dig. He asks Javier to cover for him. But what comes next is, the Queen of Ants screams toward the duo, petrified them. Looking at the ginormous ant, Lloyd asks Javier whether he can hold her back, which Javier says that he can't, but Lloyd asks him to tell him after he tries. And Javier simply says that there are things you know even without trying. But, as they have no choice, Javier decides to go for the queen anyway. With the triple circle mana heart he has, Javier prepares to receive the queen's attack, which for now, he is able to do so, while Lloyd keep digging towards the methane gas layer. As Lloyd comes in contact with the gas, he notices the gas is gushing out from the hole he made. So he tells Javier to run towards the exit, while taking the torch with him. And they run towards the exit, while the queen chases them. As they ran far enough, Lloyd throws the torch toward the methane gas, telling the ants to feast on the fire. As the fire makes contact with the gas, the fire runs wild, blows up everything around the gas layer. When the explosion about to reach them, Javier covers Lloyd so he doesn't get too badly injured. While outside the mine, Lord Arcos arrives, but when he is about to enter, Sir Bayern holds him off, as the tremor from the explosion can be felt from outside. As the explosions subside, Javier, who covers for Lloyd, is passed out. When Lloyd stands up, he is able to see that his plan has succeeded. Bangle also passed out because of the explosion. As it's not bad enough, the tunnel is blocked from the cave that collapsed and the system appears saying that Lloyd is running out of oxygen. Using his laser eyes, Lloyd knows that he needs to at least dig for a little more than 15 feet. Because of there is nothing else to do, he starts digging. As Javier wakes up with his last consciousness, he blurry sees that Lloyd is digging and saying that he will get them out of there together, no matter what, as he is responsible for both of Javier and Bangle. As Javier passed out, his approval towards Lloyd increases again, earning him 108 points. With that, Lloyd asks the system to show all of his upgrade-able skills. The system then shows Lloyd that he can upgrade his Asrahan core technique. Smile appears on his face, as he thoughts that even after the duel against Newman, he practiced any chance he got. Whatever he learned how to do, he can now improve that skill. So he uses all of his remaining points upgrading the Asrahan core technique. Now, Lloyd has 2 circle on his heart. With that, he receives more skill such as he is able to move for 10 minutes without experiencing fatigue and he can triple his mana amplification for 20 seconds. Then Lloyd uses his skills and starts digging towards the exit. All he wants is just a tiny hole so the oxygen able to come inside the cave, so he keeps digging as his oxygen level rapidly dropping. 3 meters left to go but Lloyd's oxygen level finally depleted. His skill reached its end and Lloyd fell down. Knowing how Javier and Bangle laying down helplessly, Lloyd uses his skill called Latent Power Surge to dig the rest of the way. But for the last 30 centimeters, his skills ended and all of his means is finally all used. He has no more ways to get them all out. He lays down, thinking that it's way too short, as he wanted to live the nice, sweet life of the son of a country aristocrat. As he thinks of his life ended, Lloyd hears something from the other side. It turns out Podong digs his way out to Lloyd. With a happy face he delivers the oxygen to gives Lloyd the strength to dig the remaining blockage. As the night comes that day, Lord Arcos walks deeper towards the passage of the ant nest. Lloyd finally able to reach them as he carries Javier with him. The system notification appears saying that Lloyd were able to overcome his physical limitations in an extreme environment through impressive improvisation. That experience is having a strong effect on his Asrahan core technique. As he fell down, the system rewards him with power saving mode, as in extreme exhaustion. He will use the Asrahan technique, albeit weakly. On the next sunny day, the villagers talks about Lloyd achievements, saying that previously he was troublesome drunkhead, but now Lloyd is a changed man. The villagers heard how he deal with the ant colony accident, and commend him for his bravely and save the worker first before dealing with the ants. Laying at his bed, opening his eyes, Lloyd welcomed by the system again, telling him that all of Baron Frontera's subject were deeply moved by his heroic courage and send their praises. Then rewards Lloyd with 500 RP points. Looking at it, Lloyd smiles, as he is not the least bit concerned with being a hero, but receiving the points is what makes him smile. A few days later, on another sunny day, the work resumes and Lloyd comes into the tunnel with Javier. The workers greet their lords with adores and praises. As of now, the workers think that Lloyd has fought and risked his life for them, which makes him different from regular aristocrats, thinking that Lloyd is the embodiment of noblesse oblige, which makes Lloyd feel uncomfortable instead. Now, after the incident, Lloyd is more concerned of the safety more than ever. He concentrates his time in the mine to find the smallest hazards and resolve them. While searching the ant tunnels, Javier asks Lloyd why is Lloyd doing such dangerous work in person. Because Javier thinks that Lloyd can just tell the workers to do it, which Lloyd ridicules, saying that the greater the risk, the more reason the man in charge should be on the front line. Then adding, that way, no one can say anything when Lloyd get the most money. Now, Javier is having a hard time deciding whether Lloyd is bad or good person, and the system tells Lloyd that Javier's approval rating is about to rise but didn't. As they reach the end of the tunnel, using the laser eyes, Lloyd looks behind the wall, and he finds something behind it, so he starts digging. And it's true, Lloyd finds a cave behind the wall. What inside is the ants' food, and there is an orc tied up. As Javier tries to draw his sword, intending to take care of the orc, Lloyd prevents him, saying that it's pretty reckless to just kill him. Looking at the orc, Lloyd thoughts he finds a jackpot, a new item he can play with, and decides to save him. The next day, the orc able to recover and thanks Lloyd for helping him. It revealed that the orc's name is Arash. He is the son of the orc tribe chief. He recovered in no time thanks to the Baron's physician. Arash tells Lloyd that he is the son of the Sand and Steel tribe chief, does not forget acts of kindness. And he asks what Lloyd wants and it shall be given to him. That is exactly the reason that Lloyd saved the orc, and he asks for 120 orcs to work in the mine. Arash says that impossible, and Lloyd clicked his tongue, making Arash comments that he looks like a bad man. Arash then explained that orcs are all warriors, and warriors only follow a warrior's order. Lloyd is not a warrior. Even if Arash gives him orcs, Lloyd will likely unable to give them orders. Lloyd then remembers that in the book, orcs in the wild must bring the head of a wild ant for their coming-of-age ceremony. He thinks that Arash must have accidentally went too far into the ant cave and got paralyzed. It gives him an idea, saying that there's nothing he can do, and congratulates Arash on completing his coming-of-age ceremony. Making Arash depressed, he says that he didn't even catch a wild ant and got paralyzed. It was a failure. Lloyd plays dumb, asking what Arash is talking about, saying that they have both caught the queen together while pointing at the head of the queen ant. Lloyd then manipulates him further, saying that it was such an unbelievable sight, adding that when he entered the ant nest, the queen ant was like a pile of rags, quivering. And thanks to Arash, Lloyd claims able to easily strike down the weakened the queen ant. So, he says that Wild Ant was caught by both of them, Arash the Great Warrior and Lloyd. Then Lloyd asks again about the 120 worker orcs, which Arash ecstatically says that Lloyd shall have them. A week later, in the territory of Sand and Steel tribe of wild orcs, they arrive and Arkosh greeted by his father. And when they hugged, they made a wind blast that has enormous power. As if Lloyd caught between them, he would be turned to smithereens, and he wickedly grinning, thinking that if he gets 120 workers like that, the productivity would increase by hundreds of times. Arkosh then presents the head of the queen ant, which makes the tribe cheers in the achievement, and they celebrate by doing workouts. Lloyd then realized that the orcs use gold treasure as their workout equipment. In the tribe hall, Lloyd met with the chief's refusal of the request of the 120 worker orcs. Beat up from the journey, Lloyd is surprised to see them change their mind again. So he asked Akash, the great chief of the Sand and Steel tribe, the reason for their refusal. Akash explained that their tribe eat a lot of meat to build up their muscles, so they hunt every day in 3 shifts, adding that if they don't they will experience muscle loss. He explained further that muscle loss would mean the end of their tribe, as they cannot reduce the number of warriors on the hunt. Lloyd asks why they need to hunt every single day. and Akash says that the meat spoils after 1 day, so if they eat the spoiled meat, they will experience muscle loss. Lloyd then offers them a method to store meat, making them able to last for days without spoiling. Only then the chief will able to lend the 120 worker orcs. So, that's how Lloyd made a contract with the tribe chief to get the worker orcs and their treasure. The contractor will build a storage unit and they will receive the fitness tools as payment. However, the orcs' wants fitness equipment made of stone will be provided in their place. Javier is being suspicious again at Lloyd for knowing such a thing, so Lloyd keeps explaining while also changing the topics in rapid pace. Lloyd then explained that to build the storage unit, they need the rock he pointed at. He explained that it's called granite and it's extremely strong. Javier thoughts that the stone wouldn't come loose very easily and Lloyd thinks for a moment. Lloyd thoughts that there's no dynamite there, but they do have something else instead. He looks towards Javier and thoughts of him as a human dynamite, which makes Javier nervous. Lloyd explained the chapter in the books where the city of Namaran, trapped within a powerful evil magic force field. Inside the city were thousands of refugees that Javier needed to save. By then, Javier had already attained Sword Master status and could form up to 4 mana circles. But even he could do nothing but helplessly watch the refugees have their mana sucked out of them. And without even realizing, he created his lethal skill. 1 mana circle to protect the main mana heart, and the remaining 3 circles are smashed together to create a mana blast, destroying the wall that trapped the refugees. From then on, that mana blast would become one of the Knight of Blood and Iron's signature moves, along with the Asrahan core technique. Lloyd then tells Javier about the idea of the technique, asking him whether he can do something like that. Javier tells Lloyd to tell him how does he know about things like that, which Lloyd just brushes out, saying that the thought just came to him, asking whether his eyes look like the eyes of liars. Anyway, he tells Javier to just try it, as it would be cool if Javier's swordsmanship evolved. Javier knows that Lloyd asks him to do it just because Lloyd wants something out of him. But then, if it really possible, it would be good for Javier as well, so he do as he told. He prepares himself 1 circle to protect the mana heart, and the remaining 2 are mobilized. Releasing the 2 circle, the blade exploded. Even Lloyd able to fell the explosion. But, as it is the first time Javier does it, he explodes himself as well, messing up his clothes and hair. Javier asks Lloyd whether he anticipate that kind of outcome. That Lloyd claims that he doesn't and he apologizes for it. Javier then says that regardless, Lloyd thinking proved to be correct this time as well, so it's time for him to do some work from Lloyd. The system appears, telling Lloyd that Javier is grateful for teaching him. His approval rating increased by 3 and now, Javier's approval rating is -11. While Javier is nagging that he is a knight, he trained with his sword to protect his master, not to use it for construction. Which Lloyd laughs it off, saying that Javier don't need to thank him as he already gives him RP point anyway. After that, the construction went at a lightning pace. Javier sliced up blocks of granite while Padang transported them. Even the orcs took up the job on their own, like some gym addicts without being asked. Lloyd thoughts that they will finish 5 times faster than planned. But the next problem is he has to find ice block and some insulation. He then asks Javier about the 5 men he sent out to fetch the insulation, as it has been 3 weeks, and Lloyd suspects that something had happened to them, so he asks Javier to join him looking for them. But Javier tries to find them on his own, as he is afraid that misfortune has befallen them, and he can't let the heir to the estate risk his life. But Lloyd tells him again that he is the man in charge, he is responsible for all of his worker. With nothing else to say, they both depart to look for the missing man. Somewhere in the barren land, Lloyd found the sign of the missing man. He notices that it was the special glove he made for his man, and he also notices the straw that he needs for the insulation. Javier calls out to Lloyd telling him to see a part of the canyon. He feels as the flow of mana seems unnatural. He adds that it is faint, so he is not sure. Lloyd then tries to remember an episode of the story from the book, then Lloyd looks panicked. He tells Javier to hurry, adding that their man might already dead. They then find more sign of the missing men, and finally they arrive at a cave that Lloyd recognizes, the Lupelin's dungeon. Lloyd explained that in the book, Javier goes to the dungeon early, and it was the secret hideout of the dark sorcerer named Lupelin. Lloyd then gets so mad, thinking how dares Lupelin lay a hand on his property, and that is a violation on his property rights, adding that even death penalty would be generous. But then, Javier suddenly went inside telling Lloyd to follow behind him. As Lloyd tells him to wait, Javier steps on a trap spell, which almost hurt him badly because of Lloyd able to grab him off out the way. Lloyd then mocks Javier, asking whether he is really a knight and how can he not think there might be traps like that around. Lloyd then explained that in the book, Javier gets caught on the first trap, and he enters the dungeon covered in wounds. But Javier doesn't get caught again, and that is because he knows the flow of mana in that place is a bit off. So Lloyd tells him to focus and more in tune with that feeling, so Javier do as he says. Javier then realized that where a booby trap planted, there will be an unnatural cluster of mana. Only then he is able to lead the way. As he walks deeper into the cave, Javier thoughts how Lloyd always avoids a straight answer with lies, but there's no doubt that Lloyd knows exactly what's happening right now and what will happen in the future. But Javier fails to find out how Lloyd able to do it, as he feels no significant mana or special energy from Lloyd. So he decides to focus on the task at hand, as they must rescue those soldiers. Inside the dungeon, Lupulin notices Bobby Trap is triggered, and he actually don't mind it, assuming the intruders are dead. He then finishes his preparation, proceeding to open the door to the room he detained the soldiers, hoping that this time he succeed in his spell. He takes one of the soldier, grabbing him and throws him into a kind of spell written in the floor. As he grab his size, saying that a pentacle connected to the underworld, a sickle soaked in blood for 100 days, a young man, and his preparation is perfect. As he tries to swing his scythe, Lloyd and Javier comes into the dungeon. Lloyd comes in shouting to Lupulin not to touch his stuff and threaten him. Lupulin then casts his spell, triggering the door to close on them. But Lloyd knows, and he starts to stop his breath. Inside, Lupulin thoughts that it's sleeping gas that could knock out an elephant, as he is also happy he will have 2 more person for the sacrifice. Lloyd uses Energizer. For 10 minutes he don't need to take a breath, then starts digging below the gate that blocking the dungeon. As he digs, he thoughts that since Javier has tried every insomnia remedy available, he is immune to all form of sleeping medication. While Javier thoughts how ridiculous Lloyd is digging like a mole, and he thinks that he should mock him about that later. And Lloyd tells him to blast the rest of the way to the dungeon, and with Mana Blast they open up a way to the dungeon room, surprising Lupulin. Lloyd obnoxiously comes out from the hole, saying that he bet Lupulin has never seen an entrance like that. Being surprised, Lupulin then casting his magic into the ground, summoning a ghoul that, according to him, because he keeps failing his reincarnation spells, he created an extremely strong ghoul as a byproduct. He assumes that there's no way Lloyd and Javier will get even a single scratch on its steely skin. Lloyd then tells Javier that that one is going to be pretty tough, and its weakness is its leg. But before Lloyd can finishes, Javier already jumps up in the air. He uses the Mana Blast to create another attack called Mana Blast Slash, which split the ghoul in 2, surprises Lupulin, making him unable to make another move. That attack also surprises Lloyd though, because Javier uses Mana Blast to cut the ghoul in half, which wasn't mentioned in the book. But Lloyd brushes it off. He goes to Lupulin, who looks really scared to death, thinking that Lloyd and Javier will kill him and there's no way Lupulin can beat them. Being mad at him, Lloyd says that Lupulin set his construction back by weeks because Lupulin abducted his men. He then asks how are Lupulin going to make up for that. Then Lupulin can only apologize for that, thinking that he need to get out of that situation alive no matter what. But Lloyd doesn't care a bit about Lupulin's apologies, he just want to be paid. Which Lupulin says that his cave is full of valuable tools for sorcery, and he will give Lloyd everything. There is again. Lloyd smiles maliciously, making sure whether everything in the cave belonged to him, which Lupulin says that it is. In the meantime, Javier check on the soldiers and he confirmed that all of the men are worn out, but seems fine otherwise. So Lloyd asks Lupulin about it. A few days more and the men would have starved to death. What was Lupulin planning to do with them? Which Lupulin says that he is researching how to bring back the dead. So Lloyd scolds him, saying that it is impossible. He also asks what would Lupulin do if he could. It turns out that Lupulin plans to bring back his dead wife and child. He explained that he worked as a sorcerer in his lord's castle, and him and his family lived an ordinary life. He even able to recall it as a happy life. But the lord he was serving, that fiend, tried to steal his wife from him, so Lupulin planned to run away with his family. Lloyd stops his story. Mox then scolds him, asking what was he thinking trying to bring back his family. Was he expecting his wife and child to thank him for killing hundreds of innocent people to bring them back? Lupulin tries to retaliate, but Lloyd keeps scolding him, adding that to make the ghoul he has to sacrifice a lot of people. No matter how he spin it, it won't change who Lupulin really are, because he had utterly crushed the happiness of others, people who were just like himself, and he is a serial murderer. In the end, Lloyd says that he will come back with his men to pick the tools in the cave. While turning away, he reminds Lupulin that if he dares to hurt anyone again, there will be no mercy for him, which makes Lupulin feel grateful for being pardoned from his sins. Lloyd remembers that in the novel, Javer did the same as what Lloyd did. He forces Lupulin out of his laboratory, and then instead of turning his life back around, Lupulin goes on to kill hundreds more and alters his own body. He becomes an annoying villain that Javier fights over and over again. And the reason Lloyd walking away from Lupulin while knowing all of that is because he knows well that Lupulin will try to attack him from the start. And he does. Lloyd looks at him with a death stare, adding that no mercy for him now. Then Javier swiftly beheaded him, ending the problem that might arise in the future, as Lloyd thought that villains deserve a punishment befitting a villain. Outside, Lloyd leads the party to go back to the tribe delivering the straw. Noticing the men having a hard time, Lloyd asks him to pass the bag to him. When the men tries to refuse, Lloyd says that if the men passed out, he has to carry both of his bag and him, and immediately asking them to pass the bag. In the end, the men keep pestering him, saying that how can they make their lord carry their bag, making Lloyd angry. So he tells them that if he hears another word, no one is getting a bonus, and also tell them to go. What Lloyd did had touches the men's hearts, while Javier thinks that he can't tell if Lloyd doesn't want there to be more weight to carry or he is actually worried about his men. But to those men, it doesn't really matter anyway, because for them, their master, Lloyd, is a leader they can trust and follow. The system appears telling him that the rescued soldier have been deeply moved by Lloyd's actions, through their words. That moving episode will soon spread far and wide, adding that it is a rewarding experience for Lloyd. But as always, Lloyd wasn't interested in anything other than money for the rewards. Arriving at the tribe, Lloyd shows Arkosh the finished storage room. Arkosh thinks that it is only a little bit colder than outside, so the meat will spoil in the end, and that will lead to muscle loss, which Lloyd explained that because they don't have ice yet, adding that the place isn't finished yet. Arkosh knows what the ice is. He says that there is no ice in that hot wasteland. So, Lloyd has to tell him that if they don't have any ice, they can just make some. Arkosh is not as stupid as Lloyd thinks. He is suspicious that he might bring a conman to the tribe. He also questioned the story about the Ant Queen might be a lie too. In the end, Arkosh tries to trust Lloyd, thinking that Lloyd saved him, so he can't think of him as a bad person. So he decides to leave Lloyd and Javier for the time being, adding that if they need anything they can just call out to him. When Arkosh left, Javier asks Lloyd how does he plan to make the ice blocks. Lloyd nervously turns around at Javier, saying that it is a good question as he has no idea yet. And now, Javier realizes that Lloyd really doesn't have a plan and getting mad at Lloyd. He adds that how can Lloyd made a contract with them without a plan for how to do it. Lloyd then asks Javier about what unsuccessful people have in common. He explained that because of they think they can't do this or that, they find a million reasons not to do something without even trying. But the people who succeed start things and figure them out somehow, adding that is innovation, and that is the mind of entrepreneur. But Javier simply doesn't believe it. He thinks that not a chance, because those people are 1,000 times more likely to fail than succeed. At night that day, Lloyd spends his time thinking about it. He plans on firstly making a giant ice cube mold. Then once Podong and Bangle get the water from the lake to fill the mold, he is ready to go. Lloyd knows that in this world has ice magic. He wonders how does it works. He then thinks that he definitely felt it. Every day while he trained in absorbing mana, there are different types of mana in the natural world, all with different properties. So he take a certain mana to change it in certain way, and that's how he cast magic. Of course, as of right now, he has no idea how to wield mana at will, but he has an idea that he can do something similar. So the next day, he proceed with the plan, making the mold for the ice cube and fill it with water. Using the Asrahan core technique, he tries to absorb the mana in the water. But Lloyd will only absorb the warm mana and leaves behind the cold mana. Looking at how Lloyd tries it, Javier thought that his method is irresponsible and reckless. But now, he knows that Lloyd is figuring out a way as if he is showing off to him. The system appears telling Lloyd that he has developed a new application for the Asrahan core technique. And a few days later, he succeeded in making the ice cubes, and all he need now is the insulation to finish the building of the storage room. He also not forget to look at Javier, saying that of a mind of an entrepreneur, while Javier not in defeat. The day that the storage room is finished, Lloyd and 120 orcs prepared to go back to Frontera. Akash sends the party and says his parting words that they are grateful and make a vow to Lloyd. He adds that from that moment, he declares the family of Lloyd Frontera and the Sand and Steel tribe as blood brothers. While all of the orcs pose and display their muscle, Akash says that the Fronteras are their friend and an enemy of Fronteras is an enemy of their tribe. If anyone should cause Lloyd trouble, they will be at his side. The system appears, inform Lloyd that the orc tribe has accepted him as a true friend and giving Lloyd a 100 RP bonus. That makes him fire up, then gives his own regards as well, saying long live the Sand and Steel tribe. When they arrived back at the town after the long and arduous journey, the townspeople were understandably frightened. Lloyd comes with 120 frighteningly muscly orcs entering the town. He thinks that he should issue an announcement to try and quell their fears, but it's too late now. Even the Baron and Baroness, who knew why Lloyd went to see the orc tribe, was frozen in fear when they see the orcs in person. And then there was the unexpected bonus. The story of Lloyd defeating the Dark Sorcerer and rescuing the soldier is spreading throughout the land. The people are praising Lloyd's valiance and courage. Forget the praise, Lloyd only cares about the 300 RP points he receives from it. The Baron then informed Lloyd that he finds some wealthy merchants for the orcs' exercise equipment, and all they have left to deal with is the Dark Sorcerer's tools. So Lloyd checks the content of the Lupellin's cave, where he finds something. Then he hurriedly tells Javier to tidy up the place as he will go to the mine. He ran to the mine calling up to Tords, and when he finds him, Lloyd reminds Tords about the terms of the contract where Tords need to work for 520 years. If he thinks about it, that was ridiculous and that clause was a bit of a joke. But now, he explained that Tords don't have to worry anymore. Lloyd shows that there is a spell that can turn a corpse into a ghoul he can control, and that means Tords can work the whole 520 years. Lloyd truly feel excited about it while Tords looks so defeated. Lloyd then asks him whether he is the only one excited about it, then tells Tords to smile. And so he does as he told. Tords smiled while crying his heart out. Lloyd then went away telling Tords to keep up the good work, while the system appears telling Lloyd that the ruler of the underworld is impressed by him and would like to offer him a position. Going back to the castle, Lloyd has something he needs to discuss with the Baron. As he is going to enter the Baron's office, the maid tells him that the Baron is in the reception room. He has the Lone Lenders visit him today, which makes Lloyd ecstatically laugh knowing the two-person had come and scheming something for them. Then he knocks into the reception room, entering the room and greets the two people inside. This time, the two Lone Lenders brag that they have an official invitation to visit so Lloyd wouldn't be able to threaten them again. He says that he couldn't help but overhears the amazing offer they are giving the Fronteras, so he wants to suggest his own offer to the Lone Lenders. He adds that going forwards, the Fronteras will repay their debts in smaller tranches, asking the Lone Lenders to lower the interest accordingly, which of course the Lone Lender refuse. So Lloyd refutes that they can spit out crappy offers, but he can't, adding that makes him angry. While Arkosh comes in behind Lloyd saying that who dares to anger his Frontera brother, scaring the Lone Lenders. Arkosh adds that anyone who caused trouble for the Fronteras will be destroyed with the full force of the Sand and Steel tribe. Then Lloyd chip in, saying that the Lone Lenders just has a loud voice, not angering him a bit. He then asks the Lone Lenders again about his offers, saying that if they refuses the offer they might hurt his feelings. While Arkosh says that if they hurt Frontera's feeling, he will tear them to pieces. If Lloyd has things his way, he would cancel the debt completely, but that would be a crime. So they have to make do with that change while the Lone Lenders hurriedly ran away from the castle. Lloyd then speaks to the Baron. He says that the Ondal construction business is gradually expanding, and the mining of soft coal is going smoothly. They will be able to pay off the debts in no time and gives the contract to the Baron. He adds that they now do have one big problem, and if they don't solve that, it will be serious. He says that the orcs eat 10 times more than a normal human. The cost of feeding them is huge, so if that continues they may gain more debt. However, just as Lloyd thought, the orcs are the best miners. He receives a report that an orc has been working for 24 hours non-stop. So he commands his men to get him out of there. The orc tries to refuse, feeling afraid of muscle loss. With their unbelievable fitness and an insatiable thirst for a workout, productivity has increased by more than 10-fold. Even they refuses to be paid. However, they asks to be fed until their belly's full. That's the reason why Lloyd needs a lot more money, and the Baron might need to increase tax revenues exponentially. But they can't simply ask the villagers to pay more tax, so Lloyd proposed to make the people make lots more money. He suggests the Baron to transform the Merit's wetlands into farmland, and then they will give that land to the people. But it's easier than done though, as the land has been abandoned for hundreds of years. Lloyd has made a model for it and a terrain that big will have a lot of variable. He need to build something so that it can drain the water even when it rains. Day after day, Lloyd keeps making the model to be able to enabled in the real world. On the 21st day, the Baron visit him with Javier. He informed the Baron that Lloyd has not been resting or eating properly, so he asks whether he should stop him. But the Baron tells Javier that he shouldn't. He explained that although he is Lloyd's father, he uses to hate Lloyd. He wondered when Lloyd would ever become a man, if it was even possible. But now, as if by a miracle, Lloyd is a different man and working to help the land. The Baron may not be able to help him, but he don't want to be an obstacle for Lloyd. Javier then tells the Baron that it is a wise decision. He explains that the current Lloyd is the type of person to never give up until he keeps his word. That's when the system appears telling Lloyd that Baron Frontera's approval rating has increased again. But he doesn't care about it for now, as he is too immersed in his model, where he has finally succeeded and able to make the water drain properly. And what he thinks about is the tax money will flow in like that water's draining, and will shower him in sweet golden money. As he fell down, Lloyd thought that took a lot of work, but it wasn't that bad, especially compared to staying up all night doing part-time construction work. Another notification appears, telling him that his efforts had a major impact on the special skill, and unlocked a new skill for Lloyd on the design skill, option 3, simulation mode, where he can simulate 3D model from the data he obtained from surveying the land. He is mad toward the system, asking why she only tells him now where he need to work his butt off for an entire month. The system explained that only knowledge he has acquired himself are enhanced with skills, that is all because of his wish. Then, instead of fighting with the system, he calls out to Podong and Bangle, asking them whether they are ready to make new friends. So, the first stage of the Merit's Wetlands Reclamation Project, he needs Podong and Bangle to get rid of all the water from the wetlands. But Podong explained that that's too big of a job for just the two of them, so that's why Lloyd will get them a new friend. He then summons another creature, and instead of falling face down, he bumps around punching Lloyd in the face. What comes out is a small hippopotamus, where he is happily welcomed by Podong and Bangle. Lloyd then asks him to spit out the instruction manual where it says that he doesn't get bigger with sunflower seeds, making Lloyd thinks that he really did get a dud this time. So he bring up the summoning window again, saying what a complete waste that he summons a dud, and making Hamming sad, so Bangle scolds Lloyd for being mean. Lloyd explained that they need someone bigger for their next project, while Hamming is so small making him useless. So both Podong and Bangle striking protest, and Lloyd ends up asking what Hamming's skill is. Hamming then explained that he can chug water as much as his stomach can hold, then Lloyd asks him to show what he can do, and Hamming starts to chug the water on the wetland. Looking at him, Lloyd is surprised to see that Hamming is growing bigger as he chugs waters into his stomach, even as big as Podong as he eats sunflower seed. Learning at how Hamming can suck the water dry, he calculates that they can get rid of all that water in a few days. And the two of Podong and Bangle look so smug and proud that Hamming is that powerful. Lloyd then calls out to the system. Whether was that really random, as he always seemed to get the exact skill he needs. The system then explained that usually when one get into another world, one has some sort of a special skill. And since Lloyd is a human with no skill or luck and just a whole bunch of handicaps, that is probably why Lloyd get lucky in the random summon. A little bit later, Hamming asks Lloyd whether he can drink some more, which Lloyd tells him to drink to his heart's content, because tomorrow they will start reclaiming the Merit's wetlands. Lloyd then explained for the project, they will begin with the vertical drainage system. First, Hamming removes all the water from the wetlands. He spits out the water he drank into the river. He gets smaller, then does it all over again. Then they remove any weeds or debris from the exposed ground. They make holes all over the ground with Mana Blast and put in some bamboo stalks. They fill the area with sand to make a sand bank while Podong packs down the earth. To get water out of the deepest parts of the soil, they use bamboo stalks like straw and have Hamming one-shot it all. After that, they build a levee using Lloyd upgraded simulation skill. Then after 10 days of that, they completed a sector, cheering up the workers. He says that they have a lot of work left to go in, but what happens when they are done is the bonus party. Javier looks at how the wetlands turning into a farmland. He wonder when did he starts being drafted in like that, seemingly natural for him to farm. Lloyd then gives him a bag of seeds and asks him to plant them all in the specific area he points at. Javier tries to refuses, saying that he is a knight, but Lloyd just tell him to go. Lloyd says that it's to get rid of the pests, begging him to do it. And so Javier does it. He plants the seeds and water them. From behind come the Baron and Baroness, saying that Lloyd is really turning that wetlands into farmland. Not only he, the Baron, but the people of that area must be thinking the same thing. That is simply a miracle. So, everyone in the Frontera barony feels deep awe and respect for the miracle Lloyd performed. For that great achievement, Lloyd has been awarded a large amount of point, which is 450 RP points.